Welcome to another episode of For Such a Time as This. Today I want to share with you a sin that I think I've been guilty of, and a sin that I think our entire generation has probably been guilty of. It's a sin in the way that we talk. And Jesus said, of course, the way we talk reveals what's truly inside of our hearts. The book of James describes this sin to us, where James says, he's talking about business people who say, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to go off and I'm going to go to the city of Vancouver. I am going to stay there for a year. I'm going to make some money. I'll move back here. I'll buy a house. They have great plans for how they're going to make money. But James says there's nothing wrong with planning. But when it comes from a heart that doesn't reflect God's existence, he goes on to say this: you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, James says, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. The sin that James is talking about here is the sin of presumption. The sin of presumption, that is, you presume that you are in control of your life. You presume that whatever plans you make, you can go and do them and you'll succeed at them and you can guide your life however you want to do your life. But James is seeking to humble us and to correct us, for that's to act as if God doesn't exist, as if God is not sovereign over this world, as if God does not give you your life, your breath, and every single thing in your life. He says you ought to say, if the Lord wills. You need to remind your heart that God is sovereign over all things. I remember when I was a younger pastor, I'd often get emails from an older pastor, and he would seemingly end almost every sentence with an abbreviated form. It would be a capital letter D.V, DV. And I confess, even as a pastor, I didn't know what that was. I had to Google it. It's Latin. It's Latin for Deo, which means God, and volente, which means willing. So at the end of almost every sentence, he would write DV, meaning God willing. And I remember thinking, do we really need to write this at the end of every sentence? I mean, we know we can only do things if God is willing for us to do them. But he wanted to remind himself all the time of that case. I'm not saying we have to do this at the end of every sentence, or we always need to say the words Lord willing. But James is correcting us. He's saying, look at your heart on all of these things. For me, I've known this, of course, in my head. I know that God is sovereign. It's not like I need a theology lesson, but I needed to learn it in experience. And two things in particular have really taught this to me in my experience. First, our series through the book of Ecclesiastes, where we learned that life is hevel, that life is like a breath, a mist, the same word James uses here. It's a mist. You cannot control it. And then, of course, COVID-19 has taught me through hard experience already that I am not in control of my life, that all my best plans can quickly collapse. So I can only do anything if God wills it. So from here on in, I say to God, forgive me if I've ever been presumptuous. Forgive me for not fully thinking of all things under your sovereignty. And from here on in, I want to begin to use those words, Lord willing, a little bit more. It doesn't have to be in every sentence all the time, but it should certainly be in our hearts. And as much as we can, even in our speech. Let's move forward during this time and learn what COVID-19 can teach us, that it's only if the Lord wills it that we will do this or do that.